कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयम् करुणालयम् नमामि भगवत्पादम् शङ्करम् लोकशङ्करम्।
So we are the Bhashya on the 8th Karika. Ichhamatram prabho srishti iti srishto vinischitaha kalat prasudim bhudanam manyante kala chintaka. So after this, the author Gaudapada takes up another subject. Till now we were discussing how Srishti or creation came into existence and how it evolved. In this 9th Karika is discussing why and for what purpose the creation began. That's the question. Now, in answer to this, the author said that Devasya esha subhavaha. So here Deva should be taken as Brahman. Deva is nothing to do with celestial beings, gods and goddesses, Devi Deva. Here Deva means the effulgent one, the Swayam Prakasha, Brahman. So it's a very important discussion. Brahmana Subhavaha. So what does it mean there? The real implication of Subhava is avidya in the context of creation. So Subhava is a natural characteristic of something which is inseparable from it. Like the heat and light of fire cannot be separated from fire. You take away heat and light, then the fire is no more fire. So they cannot be separated. So that's the real meaning Susya Bhavaha. The essential properties that constitute that particular entity. In the context of Gaudapada's creation theory, here Swabhava means avidya. And in avidya as Swabhava and Maya as the cause of the universe. So in fact avidya and Maya are practically the same, used in two different contexts. When you think of Maya as the cause of the universe, which really doesn't exist in the absolute sense, it is called Maya. When the same phenomenon, the same Shakti, which is anirvachaniya, which cannot be really explained, is looked upon as something that causes confusion, the wrong notion in your mind that there is a real world which is absolutely real. When you interpret that power as the cause of this wrong notion, then it is called avidya. So Anandagiri makes it clear, adhisthana bhuda rijwadinam subhava sabdidasya ajnana deva sarpadi abhasatvam tatha parasya swamaya shakti vashat akashadi abhasatvam atmana akasha sambhuda Akashat Vayu, Vayu Rakni, Akni Rabha, Abhya Prithivi. So this is how creation begins. Anyway, we will come to that. So the point is, Swabhava should be taken as avidya. This will be taken up in course of time. Now, we will come to the Bhashya. Bhogartham. Bhogartham means Srishtuhu Bhogartham. So that is one theory. The theory is going to be exploded, going to be rejected by Advaitin. with the statement Devasya Esha Sabhavaka. So Bhogartham Kridartham iti. I mean, the Kridartham is a normal way of explaining this world in many of the devotional philosophical systems. Everything is God's play. Though frequently in the great devotional classics like Bhagavata Purana, you find everything is God's play, Lord Krishna's play, the whole creation. They don't really mean as a doctrine, but ideas were shared by many of the devotional philosophers in ancient times. But Gaudapada as a logician, rather Shankaracharya as a logician, points out the problem that if you want to do something, either play or enjoyment or experiencing bhoga or krida, then it implies an imperfection in you. Then you cannot say it is Ishvara. So that's why, apta kamasya kasprha, because Creator is supposed to be apta kama. He doesn't have any more desire to be fulfilled. He is one whose all desires have already been fulfilled. So he is called apta kama. All kamas are apta, I mean attained. So anye sushti manyante anayoho pakshayoho dushanam devasya eva swabhavaha ayam iti. So anayoho pakshayoho dushanam. So these two views, that is bhogartham and kridartham, these two views are rejected with the statement, this is the swabhava, I mean the characteristic. You cannot give a real explanation, or you cannot even ask a question about swabhava. Why round is round in shape, for example? You cannot say that. Why should it be something else? Because it is called a round object because of its round shape. So if you go for an explanation, there is only one explanation, that is anivachaniya. That's only explanation. Anivachaniyatum doesn't mean ignorance. It means irrelevance of such a question. That is the real meaning. The total irrelevance of it. So that's why Anandagiri says, Adhisthana bhuta rajwadinam swabhava sabdidasya ajnanadeva sarpadya bhasatu. So why this sarpa bhasa? Why do you misunderstand a rope for a snake? Going back to the analogy. That's just because Adhisthana bhuta rajwadinam swabhava sabdidasya ajnanad. You don't know it is a rope. So because of your ignorance of what is actually lying in front of you, which is really a piece of rope, you mistake that rope for a snake. From an empirical sense, you can find an explanation. There is not enough light in the room, and you remember seeing a snake sometime in the past. The adhyasa is smriti rupa. You remember that, and then you superimpose that memory, the smriti, on the object in front of you. These are all explanations. But why should it happen? If you ask the question, why should there be gravitation? The question, absolutely the question itself is ridiculous, because that is the swabhava of creation or entity. So that's the idea behind. So that's why the color, the shape, and the way it's lying there, the rope, it creates the wrong notion. But actually Rajju is not responsible for it. It is Smriti that is responsible for it. But you do not have this wrong notion unless there is a Rajju in front of you. That is also a subject is going to be discussed as an answer to the Purva Paksha. That is substractum. Rajju is the Adhisthana, the substractum. So the ultimate theory is what you mistake and what wrong notion you have in your mind, that is this is a snake, that object is actually Brahman itself. So what you mistake to be the sarpa is Rajju itself. In other words, what you mistake to be Srishti or creation is Brahman itself. That's the idea behind. And it all happens because Adhisthana Bhuta Rajwadinam Ajnanat. That's right. That is the Anandagiri's explanation. You don't know what is the substratum. So Sumaya Shakti Vashad Agashadi Abhasatum. Sumaya. So here also it is in support of the Vyakarana theory that the avidya is actually Brahma Vishaya and Brahma Asraya. That is the Vyakarana's theory of avidya. And according to Bhamadi school, actually it is Brahma Vishaya but Jiva Asraya. So that's the only difference. According to Bhamadi school, avidya is Brahma Vishaya and Jiva Asraya. There may be the problem because of the object lying in front of you, which is actually Rajju, which is a piece of rope. You happen to have the wrong notion that there is a snake in front of you. If there was no object at all, in total vacuum, if the room was empty, you won't mistake anything for anything else. That is why Sumaya Shakti Vashad. That is by Sumaya means here, Susyamaya means Brahmanaha Maya. So Maya is Brahma Vishaya and Brahmasraya. That's what the meaning here. Akashadi Abhasatvam. That is Anandagiri says. Then Anandagiri quotes the evolution, Atmana Akasha Sambhuda Akashad Vayu Vayu Rakni Agnerabha Abhya Prudhivi Prudhivya Moshe Deha, etc. And all this says. So Bhudakaranatvam Pramana Bhava Dityarthaka. Nadu Kalasya Bhudakaranatvam Pramana Bhava Dityarthaka. There is no other Pramana. So this is the idea behind. So why this point? Again, the emphasis is Srishti and Srashta. Creation and creator are the same. Because if you ever admit a distinction between creator and creation, then you have to admit that there is a Rajju and there is a Sarpa. So-called creation, that is Sarpa in this context, is Rajju itself. The so-called creation is Creator himself. That's the idea behind. So that's the logic of rejecting all the previous doctrines of creation. That is, there are, of course, we already discussed Icha Matram, then Pravosishti, then Kala is responsible, Satya Sankalpa is responsible, Vibhuti is responsible, and Swapnamaya is responsible. If you say that God created this world from Kala, God created this world because of Icha and so on, then there should be a God, there should be a Brahman, and there should be creation, two entities. He creates something out of something. But actually, the Creator himself wrongly is interpreted as creation. That's the idea. In the context of that Indian Roptrick context, it is the magician himself who is wrongly seen by you because of your ignorance as climbing to the sky using the rope which is thrown to the sky. Actually, magician is standing there. But if he had not come there and started his play, you won't be seeing this illusion in front of you. So he is there. He is the one who is seen to be climbing to the sky, going and disappearing and coming back, broken into pieces and all that. So that's the idea behind. So, Anayoho Pakshayoho Dushanam Devasya Eva Subhavoyamiti. Devasya Subhava Paksham Asritya Sarvesham Va Pakshanam Aptakamasya Kas Praka Iti. So this is Subhava Paksha or Subhava Vada, that means here. That is, That is, creation is the Swabhava of Creator, Srashta himself. So, Sarvesham Pakshanam Aptakamasika Spraha iti Dushanam. That means rejection of all other views with the statement, this is Swabhava. Because when you say Swabhava, it is the end of the logic, the end of the argument. If you say it is so, that means there is no further logic. That is, so you have to remember, this is again a prelude. All these words constitute a prelude, an introduction to the seventh mantra. That is, na antaprajnam, na bahishprajnam, na ubhayadaprajnam, na prajnanaghanam, na prajnam, na aprajnam. This is the most important mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad. It is called negative theology. Vedanta tells you that you can explain something, the absolute reality, you can explain only by explaining what it is not, and not by explaining what it is. It is called the Nishetha Mukhavakyam. That means it is sometimes you find, those of you, I don't know how many of you, if you read the great German mystic who lived in 13th century Germany, is called Meister Eckhart. He is the originator of the negative theology. He said that language cannot explain the reality. Language is beyond verbalization. Language can only exhaust all possible options of verbalizations and definitions. And when you exhaust all definitions, all attempts to explain, what is left out is the reality. See, take this particular analogy, Rajju Sarpa Pranti. 4 persons have 4 different notions, each of them a different notion. One person mistakes the rope for a snake, another one for a thin stream of water, Jaladhara, another for Danda, a stick, another one maybe Bhuchidra, a crack on the floor, and of course the first one as a snake, Sarpa. These are 4 vikalpas that you superimpose upon Rajju. And now, when you bring light, all these 4 objects are gone. Then you don't need anything more to understand what is lying there. When the Sarpa Buddhi goes away, Danda Buddhi goes away, when the Jaladhara Brahma goes away, all these Brahmas, when they disappear, all these wrong notions, when they disappear, what is left out is, you don't have to explain it. Rajju itself. Of course, this is an example from empirical world, which is never an exact equivalent to the reality in Vedanta. So every drishtanta is only an approximation. Drishtanta cannot be considered to be equivalent to what it is trying to exemplify. So that's the point. So like that, when you say Swabhava, then you actually exhaust all other possible wrong notions, all other possible interpretations. That's why the 7th mantra ends, Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyande Sa Atma Savijñeha. The Prapanchopashamam Shantam. When you just leave out, when you filter out all other wrong notions, then the right notion is what is left out. This particular interpretation is called Nishetha Mukhena, means Nishetha Mukha Vakyam. That is the Neti Neti, Nanta Prajnam, Bhush Prajnam, Ubhayada Prajnam, etc. This is a much more complete way of explaining the reality. The other one is Vidhimukha. Vidhimukha Vagya Surgagamo Yajeda, etc. Satchidanandam Brahma, etc. So So that is an attempt to explain the Surupa Lakshana, attempt to explain approximately what it is, but it cannot be really explained. So how do you explain something which cannot be explained? Only by pointing out everything, and then finally Visranti. That is Prapanchopashamam, or everything gets completely dissolved. So Prapancha Upashama takes place. It's called Visranti Nyaya. At that time, what is left out is Turiya, which is beyond Pancha Shabda Pravritti Nishedha, which we are going to discuss in course of time. So, Nahi Rajwadhinam Avidya Swabhava Vetirekena Sarpadya Bhasatve Karanam Shakyam Vaktum. Nahi Rajwadhinam Avidya Swabhava Vetirekena. There is no other way to explain. Avidya Swabhava Vetirekena. You cannot really explain any other way. Why and how you mistook the Rajju for Sarpa. So that's the idea behind Rajju. It may be for Sarpa, Danda, Bhuchidra, whatever it is. So this is called Swabhava Paksha. So the Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chadurtham Manyante etc. means. Another important, of course, from the logical point of view, another problem is all other explanations of creation will have one serious logical fallacy called, it is called Anavastha Dosha, means ad infinitum regression. You go on explaining. If you say Icha, Bhoga, or any other reason you give, or Kala, or Satya Sankalpa, the question arises, why should Creator have a Satya Sankalpa? Why should things emerge in Kala? And why should, if it is Swapnamaya, why should emerge? And again, Bhoga, Krida, why should the Creator have a desire for Bhoga and Krida? All these questions will arise. And then those questions will never really come to an end. But if you say Swabhava Paksha, then it is Visranti. That means, Visranti here means Chitta Visranti. That's the idea. Chitta Visranti. That's the difference between Sushupti and Turiya experience. In Sushupti, you have only Chitta Laya. In Tattva Bodha, when you realize your Turiya dimension, you will have Chitta Visranti. Prapanchopashamam, Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam. So Visranti and Laya are two different things. Chitta Laya is the experience in Sushupti, in deep sleep, and Chitta Visranti is the experience in Tattva Bodha or in Turiya experience. So that's over. I don't think you have any doubt about it. Now we will have the next sentence. Chadurtha pada krama prapto vaktavya ityaha. So why Chadurtham manyante? That's a word. So all these words constitute a prelude, an introduction to the seventh mantra, which, as I mentioned, is the most important mantra in the entire text, and considered to be one of the most celebrated mantras in the entire Upanishadic philosophy, because it is the basis for Neti Neti Prakriya. Chadurtha pada krama prapto vaktavya. So why Chadurtha, fourth, is mentioned? It is only krama prapta. So Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. In that context, you are mentioning this Turiya. So that is the only reason why it is mentioned as Chadurtham Manyante, etc. It's called in a Vishishta Nirdesha. I mean, in the context of Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. It's called the Vishishta Nirdesha. Nanta Prakyam Ityadina. Sarva Shabda Pravritti Nimitta Shunyatva Tasya Shabda Anabhideyatvam Idi Vishesha Pradeshedhenaiva Turiyam Nirdidikshati. So that is me. So Nishedha Prakriya, that is explained here. Sarva Shabda Pravritti Nimitta Shunyatvad. So these 5 conditions of verbalization. One is Sambandha, Ruti, Jati, Guna and Kriya. Sambandha is based on Shashti Vibhakti. It's the most important of this. So you can say, you can explain, define something in the context of or in relation to something else. Showing the 6th case ending, Shashti Sambandha. It is called Shashti Sambandha itself is called. And because that brings out Shabdartha Bodha means. Shabdartha Bodha means, when you say something, Mama Griham, so you are actually, if you say, this is my home, you are actually trying to see a connection between yourself and the home in which you are living. And so that connection is brought out. Shashti Sambandha, and you get a clear picture of what the object is in the context. Oh, this person is your father, mother, whatever it is. There's one way of indicating the person called Sambandha. So that will be explained in the coming sentence in course of time. Rudhi is something that is conventional. For a long time, a particular object is called something, this is what it is called. So Rudhi, by convention, by tradition, for a long time. Then we have this Jati. Jati generic, a Samanya entity, in contrast to specific, which is Vishesha. And then Guna is called Nirodpalam, that is normal in Vyakarana, and also in the Bhashya you find a flower that is blue in color. So its guna is quality is brought out. Kriya, Gayaka, Pachaka, the one who cooks, the one who sings. So you explain somebody or something in relation to what the person or what the particular entity does. So these are the 5 conditions of verbalization. Bhashyakara will reject each of these and will establish that Turiya is Sarva Pramana Avadhi and Sarva Shabda Pravritti Nishedha. That's what we are going to discuss today. So Sarva Shabda Pravritti Nimitta Shunyatva Tasya Shabda Anabhideyatvam. Therefore, if you cannot explain anything either in the context of Sambandha, connection or association, or in the context of Rudhi, through conventional meaning or interpretation, or Jati, generic or specific, Samanya or Vishesha, or Guna, or Kriya, then it becomes Shabda Anabhideya, means it cannot be explained, defined or understood by words. So Shabda Anabhideyatum. And for that very reason, what happens? Sarva Shabda Abhideyatum. So these are important technique in logic. Suppose you have something which cannot be explained at all in the empirical world, then you will say it has no name. But here we are discussing something which is our own nature, which is the only thing that really exists. So when you say Turiya is Shabda Anabhideya, means it cannot be defined or explained or called a name, described. When you say, what it means is, it is the one reality that is indicated by every word. So that will Sarva Shabda Abhideyatvam and Shabda Anabhideyatvam practically imply the same in the context of Atman. Because when you leave out, when you reject all other false entities, you suppose you say the Raju was Sarpa, Jaladhara, Danda, Bhuchidra, you used all this. And finally when you bring light, so all these wrong notions are gone. So by all these names, you are actually indicating Raju only. You said it is Danda, you are actually talking about Raju, this rope. You thought it was Sarpa, actually because of wrong notion you were indicating Raju only. And if it's Bhuchidra, then also actually you are implying Raju only. So Shabda Anabhideyatvam becomes Sarva Shabda Abhideyatvam. So by every possible word you are actually indicating Brahman. That means Srishti in reality is not distinct from Brahman. So that's the idea behind. Only you give it a different name because of avidya, ignorance. That's the idea behind. So in that context it is called avidya. And when you explain the world and its cause, then the cause of the world is context Maya. The same thing is called Maya. So sarva shabda pravritti nimitta shunyatvat tasya shabda anabhideyatvam vishesha pradeshedhenaiva turiyam nirdidikshati. So therefore by rejecting out, by filtering out all other possible names, you call it Turiya. It doesn't mean that it is the fourth one. That's why Bhashyakara says Chaturthapadaha Kramaprapto Vaktavya. Kramaprapta means in the context of Vishwa Taijasa Prajna, the mantra calls it Chaturtham. It is not the fourth. It is the only reality. So when you called Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, etc., you are actually talking about Turiya only. So you should remember the old analogy, when the magician is seeing to be climbing using the rope, the sky, climbing the sky, actually everything is happening because of the real magician who is standing somewhere outside watching the whole thing. So that is the only reality which is perceived wrongly due to avidya as Vishwa, Taijasa and Prajna. Now in this context, here is a Purvabhaksha. Shunyameva tarhi. Shunyameva. In that case it is emptiness. Well, suppose you say this table. There is it's not there, there is no clock, no cup, no pencil, no book on the table. What it means is the table is empty. But this is only for the empirical worldly standpoint. That is why Bhaudika Drishtya Shunyameva, that is the other Tikakaras will tell you, means in this context. Shunyameva tarhi. Sabda pravritti nishedha means shunyam in the worldly empirical sense. But here Bhashyakara will give the reason why it is not shunyam. Mittan na mithya vikalpasya nirnimittatva anubhoteki. Actually, we are doing nishedha, we are rejecting the wrong vikalpas within ourselves. Well, suppose say, I am not this mind, I am not mana, buddhi, chitta, hangara, etc. Then who am I? The I is there always. That cannot be rejected. We are only rejecting in our own self all the wrong non-self vikalpas. Because our own self we cannot reject. Here you have to remember, there's very often these days people forget the fact that during Shankaracharya's time, Nagarjuna's philosophy of Shunya, that is Madhyamika Siddhanta, which is Madhyamika Karika, Mula Madhyama Shastras, which is the Bible of the Shunya theory, and Yogacara, the subjective idealism of Vasubandhu and his disciple Dignaga. They were all mixed up. So, very often, one should remember, very often we forget that Shankaracharya is not directly talking about Buddha's original teachings. During Shankaracharya's time, the most popular Buddhist doctrine was the Yogacara school of Dignaga. Dignaga was a later Pravritti Vijnanavada, he is the exponent of Pravritti Vijnanavada, which is a later fringe group that evolved out of Alaya Vijnanavada, which is much earlier form of Vijnanavada. So there was one well-known book written by Dignaga, its name is Alambana Pariksha. It's all about cognition. Dignaga was the father of the Madhyama Nyaya, the school of Indian logic which evolved after Gautama and before the Navya Nyaya school. So between these there was Madhyama Nyaya. The Dignaga is the most important name in the Madhyama Nyaya Siddhanta. So he wrote the Pramana Samuchaya, and also he wrote this Buddhist book on Yogacara cognition. It's called Alambana Pariksha. So many of Shankaracharya's views, when he criticizes, when he refutes Buddhist theories, have a reference to Dignaga's theories, which actually say which is long departure, a deviation from Buddha's original teachings and also the early teachings of Buddhist philosophers. So that should be kept in mind. Very often we take only the Purvapaksha view of Buddhism. In reality, according to Shunya, original Shunya Siddhanta, according to Nagarjuna, Shunya means that there is no real independent entities. Everything is dependent, praditya samutpada. There is nothing in this world has got inherent existence, inherent and eternal and independent existence. Everything is dependent upon something. So that is the real emphasis on in the original Shunya Siddhanta, which was of course hijacked by the later Buddhist Nyaya. So I am not going to those details right now. So the Purvapaksha here is Shunyameva Tarhi. If you argue that Turiya cannot be really defined by words, and if it cannot be explained or described, then it may be Shunya only. But Bhashyakara says no. Mithya vikalpasya nirnimittatva anupapattehi. No upapatti for anything which has no nimitta. See, even mithya vikalpa cannot exist without a substratum. Even a wrong notion will have the background of a right notion. When you mistake, there should be something lying on the floor. If there is nothing, absolutely nothing, then you won't see anything for anything. So when you mistake, when you feel, when you wrongly believe that you see something, what you interpret in your mind may not be there, but there should be something, and that is the substratum, the adhisthana, the adhara. This is nimitta, an adhara should be there. In this context, there is an adhara, and that adhara is Turiya. That is the argument replied, the Siddhanta Paksha. So the Shunya theory can work only in the context of empirical things. Because when you say it is not there, it is not there, means it is absent there. But in the context of Vedanta, when you leave out the wrong notions that we have about ourselves, the real ourselves, I, cannot be left out. That is the Adhara on which Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, Pranadi, Vikalpas are all superimposed. So that is an important thing to remember. So the Siddhanta Paksha continues. Nahi Rajada Sarpa Purusha Mrigatishnika. So you should remember Rajada. These are Vikalpas. So there is Shuktika, the mother of the pearl, that is mistaken to be Rajada. And there is Rajju, that is mistaken to be Sarpa. And there is Ushara Bhumi, that is mistaken to be Mrigatishnika. There is Thanu, that is mistaken to be Purusha. So these are the four Vikalpas and their Adharas explained here. There is Thanu, a pillar that you see in front of you, you mistake it for a human being. The pillar is there, the human being is not there. That is your misunderstanding. There is Rajju, the rope, you mistake it for Sarpa. Sarpa is only Sarpa Brahma, but Rajju is there, it's an empirical thing. And then there is mother of pearl. When you walk in the seashore, there will be the brilliant things seen. Mother of pearl may be mistaken to be silver. Silver is only Rajada, Brahma is there in your head. Wrong notion. The mother of pearl is there. Again, when you walk in a desert, you may mistake the huge expanse of sand to be pool of water, pond. The sand is there, only the pond, the pool of water is Brahma. So for every Vikalpa, there is an Adhara. That without Adhara, there cannot be any Vikalpa. That's why Nahi Rajada Sarpa Purusha Mrigatushnagadi Vikalpaha Shuktiga Rajusthanu Usharadi Vidirekena Avastu Aspadaha Shakyaha Kalpaidum. So that's why, if you say there is Shunya, then you will be implying that these Vikalpas can exist without an Adhara, but Vikalpas cannot exist without an Adhara. Shuktiga Rajju Sthanu Usharadi Vitirekena Avastu Aspadaha Shakya Kalpaidam. Means you can say that sand is not there, Sthanu is not there, Rajju is not there, Shuktika is not there. You have to say that. It will be ridiculous. So for every Vikalpa, there is an Adhara, there is a background on which you do Vikalpa. Therefore, it cannot be Shunya. Because the Adhara for all these different Vikalpas, the Pranadi Vikalpas or Vishada is a Prajna Vikalpa, all for the one Adhara is there, that is Turiya. Purvapaksha continues in another context. Evam tarhi Pranadi Sarva Vikalpaspadatva Turiyasya Shabdavachittum iti na pradishedhi pratyayattum Udagadhara dehi iva khada dehi. So that's the thing. Now another, you have to remember here in this context, the Siddhantin made 2-3 statements. From there, Purvapakshi is drawing another objection. One statement is, Siddhantin said that when you eliminate all Vikalpas, what is left out is Turiya as the Adhara. And then the Siddhantin also said, Turiyasya Shabda Pravritti Nishedhatvam, means Turiya cannot be explained in words. So there is an adhara for everything. Pranadiya, Vikalpas have got an adhara, that is Turiya, and then Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, all these Vikalpas also have an adhara, that is Turiya. So that is one view. Another view is, this Turiya cannot be explained in words. Sarva, Shabda, Pravritti, Nishedha. That also, Panja Shabda, Pravritti, Nishedha. That point also was emphasized by Siddhanta Pakshi. Then Purva Pakshi asked the question, then why don't you interpret this Turiya as the adhara of everything? Why do you say that it cannot be explained? On the one hand, you say that the Turiya is the adhara, the substratum of all Vikalpas. Then why don't you define Turiya as the substratum of all Vikalpas? Why do you argue that it cannot be explained through Sambandha, Rudhi, Jati, Gunan, Kriya and so on? Why do you argue that it is beyond definition, beyond description? You can define it as the adhara of everything. So that is the argument. Evam tarhi pranadi sarva vikalpaspadatva turiyasya sabdavachitvam. So Turiyasya Sabdavachitvam, that is the Purva Pakshi. Turiya is Sabdavachyam. Turiya can be explained by Shabda, by words. Because it is the substratum of all these unreal Vikalpas, like Prana, etc. Prana here means Prana and then Jagra, Swapna, Sushupti, Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, etc. So when it's Pranadi Vikalpa, I mean Adi stands for Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, and Jagra, Swapna, Sushupti. All these are taken to be one bundle of Vikalpas, which is technically called Pranadi Vikalpas. That's the implication here. Evam tarhi Pranadi Sarva Vikalpas. Paspadatvad. So Turiya is the aspada, the adhara, the substratum of all the Vikalpas, Prana, Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna, etc. Turiyasya Shabdavachitvam. So Turiya has got Shabdavachitvam. Turiya can be explained and defined in Shabda. You need not say that it is beyond Shabda. You need not talk about Panja Shabda Pravritti Nishedha in the context of Turiya. It can be defined as the adhara of everything, as the substratum of everything. Na pradeshedhi pratyayatvam. So you don't have to explain it as through Nishedha Mukha Vakya. Nishedha Mukha Vakya, pradeshedha mean here it is a reference to the seventh mantra, na anta prakyam, na bahir prakyam, na ubhayada prakyam, etc. So that is the argument. So when Bhashyakara said in defense of the seventh mantra that Turiya can be more completely explained only by negating all the wrong notions, all the Vikalpas. So we have to resort to Nishedha Mukha Vakya, Neti Neti, Nanta Prakyam, Nabhish Prakyam, etc. So Purva says, no. Why should you say that? You can say it is the adhara of everything. Why do you go for negative theology? It's called negative theology in the Christian theological tradition. Then he says, Pratyayatam Udaga Adhara Dehe Iva. So that's the meaning. Udaga Adhara means, Udaga means water. Adhara means a pot. Suppose you are holding water in a pot. Well, you can explain the pot as the vessel in which you have kept the water. You can define the pot as the adhara, as the substratum of water, because the water is kept in the pot. So that's why Udagaradehi Iva. So just like you define a pond as a vessel in which water is kept, the pot becomes the adhara. Like that, Turiya is the adhara of pranadi vikalpas. Still, there is no need for the pradishedha. Pradishedha means nishedha mukha vakya. That's the idea. To this, Siddhanta Pakshin replies, no. Pranadi vikalpasya avastutvad. Sometimes asatva, that is another part of Veda is there. Suktigadishu iva rijidadehi, etc. Now, in short, the answer is this. We'll take up one after another. Pranadi vikalpasya avastutva suktigadishu iva rijidadehi. Okay, now, you said that you can define Turiya as the adhara, as the substratum of pranadi vikalpas. Just like you can define a pot as the vessel in which water is kept. But here, water is an empirical thing. It's a vyavaharika entity. And pot is also an empirical reality, vyavaharika entity. But here, pranadi vikalpas are like shuktika. Pranadi vikalpas are like rajata, Actually, shuktika is only reality. Rajata is only in your head. Rajju is only reality. Sarpa is only sarpa brahma. So that's an important point. You cannot define Rajju as the thing which appears to be sarpa. You cannot say that. Because sarpa buddhi is only in your head. But here, water and pot both can be seen in front of you. But silver cannot be seen. Silver is only a brahma. It is only pradibhasika. Like sarpa buddhi is only pradibhasika. But Rajju is vyavaharika and shuktika is vyavaharika, on which you superimpose Rajata buddhi, just as you superimpose sarpa buddhi or sarpa brahma on Rajju. These are two entities, two levels of realities. One is absolutely your imagination. The other one is something that you see in front of you. So, how can you join them together? So, the Bhashyakara says, na pranadi vikalpasya avastutvad. The pranadi vikalpa, prana, vishwa, this is a prajna, etc. They are totally unreal. It's only Brahma, only wrong notion, like sarpa buddhi or rajata buddhi. So that's why it says, it's iva rajadadehi. Nahi sada sadohu sambandhaka. So you cannot have any sambandha between something that you see in front of you, it's a vyavaharika entity, and something which is pradibhasika, which is only in your mind, only Brahma. So that is Shashti Sambandha can work only when both the person you're talking about and his connection are real. See, you can see X is Y's brother. X and Y both can be seen. Y is not your imagination. Y is a reality. When two persons association is mentioned, those two persons are real in the empirical world. But in this context, pranadi vikalpas are only Brahma, like sarpa Brahma, sarpa buddhi, rajata buddhi, etc. So they cannot be joined. So we'll continue discussion in the coming session. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram